Welcome back to the General Well Servicing CAODC podcast. With me now is Mr. Andrew Davidson, President, CEO, and Chairman of the Board at Royal Helium Ltd. Mr. Davidson is a resource development professional with more than a decade of continued experience in moving quality projects from greenfield exploration to production across multiple commodity types. As founder of Royal Helium, Mr. Davidson is one of the most experienced helium exploration executives in Canada. Thank you very much for joining us, Andrew.
Well, thanks for your interest and thanks for the time.
So last week we were excited to see that one of our member companies, Savannah Drilling, was working on a helium exploration well. And yeah, it's kind of another in a long list of expanding commodities that drilling companies are getting involved with. So we thought our listeners would be interested in learning a little bit about the world of helium as a commodity. So are you originally from Saskatchewan, or how did you get started?
Yeah, I was raised in Saskatchewan, and like most Saskatchewan people, I took a 10-year sabbatical to Calgary, where I finished my schooling at U of C there, and then worked at a local accounting firm, got my chartered accountant designation, started a family, and then moved back home. And I've been here since 2007, and been in the development industry of natural resources since 2010. Focused on a lot of things, but oil and gas was one of the leading commodities that we've been after here during that time, and then since 2016 and 2017 with a real heavy shift over towards helium development. It's been a bit of a whirlwind. Helium's a very misunderstood, I guess, resource, and that people generally associate it with things like balloons. And really, that's about it, actually, what most people think of helium as. And that's fair. I mean, balloons do constitute part of the market, but it is a small and shrinking part of the market.
So, I mean, from a drilling perspective, what types of formations typically hold helium?
In Saskatchewan, helium is generally found right above the Precambrian basement, so in the Deadwood Sands formation and the Winnipeg Sands. So that's what we target, and Savannah has been phenomenal to partner with on drilling these 3 wells. We're halfway through our final well in this program as we speak. So that's about 2,600 meters down in Saskatchewan into the Precambrian basement, and ours are straight vertical wells. We do use directional tools on them to keep them straight at that depth, because it's a long way to travel with a lot of potential vectoring off. But a great group of services that are involved in this program. But in terms of drilling, it's relatively straightforward. And even on the completion side, we don't anticipate any need for any stimulation, no fracking. It's generally just perf through casing and produce gas up hole.
Okay, so, and how do you extract it? How do you store it? How do you transport it?
Yeah, there's lots of questions. I'm happy to get into all of it. So producing it is functionally the same as producing natural gas. I mean, the gas at depth is under a high degree of pressure. It comes up on its own. Historically, most helium wells produced in Saskatchewan are choked back to keep flow rate under control, because they do generally flow very fast when you're producing from 2,500 meters down. Once to surface, it goes through there's a bunch of different options you can do. What we're going to do is run it through a series of membranes, which is it's a production facility or a processing facility about the size of a sea can, where you pipe the gas into that. It separates out larger molecules, and helium being the smallest molecule is going to be what's left at the end of that. And so you have a sort of a refined or upgraded helium product out of the raw gas stream that you feed through. And in Saskatchewan, we're a bit unique in that the gas that comes up with helium is principally nitrogen as opposed to methane, which provides some pretty big advantages on the processing side. Running nitrogen through these membrane facilities is very standard, straightforward practice. It's a bit more difficult when you're dealing with natural gas. It involves some cooling and different pressures, and we don't have to deal with that to any great degree, which is nice. Now, once you have it there, it's stored in pressurized tanks, and basically hauled away. The way that the helium market is now, every MCF of helium that's produced is sold virtually instantly. There's such a demand for it and such an undersupply. And what happens in Saskatchewan, where helium has been produced since the 1960s, is it gets produced, loaded into the pressurized vessels, and driven away into the U.S. And from there, it's generally sold as either a gas or a liquid. It gets taken to a liquefaction plant in Wyoming, is the closest one to Saskatchewan. And there it gets liquefied and sold around the world. Helium as a liquid can travel anywhere. As a gas, it's a relatively short runway because it will escape just about anything.
Okay, and so you're transporting it as a gas then?
Yeah, we'll be transporting it as a gas until such time as we have sufficient reserves to justify building a liquefaction facility in Saskatchewan. And we're not there yet, but we're building towards it, certainly. It's on our project development timeline. But initially, it's going to be gas and it's going to be gone.
And that's running on trucks?
Yeah, it runs on trucks. So it's there's purpose-built helium trailers that have an array of nine tubes on them. So they're roughly the shape of a cigar tube if you need one of those. And there's 9 of them on a trailer, 333. And they get filled, they're pressurized, it's sealed, and that drives away. And because they're purpose-built, what tends to happen is they get driven to an intermediate point, say somewhere in Montana, where the transport company drops it off and then picks up an empty one and hauls it right back. And so it's sort of a constant flow of trucking back and forth. So that's how it's going to be for us.
Okay, and so the market for it, I was trying to do a little bit of research on it, and it seems, I guess, not quite as structured as perhaps other commodities are. Can you give us a bit of an introduction to that? Or
Yeah. The helium market is an interesting one. It's a very, very large market, and it is extremely structured. And what it lacks is a quoted market price. There's no spot price for helium. So it trades, all on long-term contract, and generally with very, very large companies. Like think of the major industrial gas companies like Air Products International, or Linde, or Praxair. These are the primary purchasers of helium from producers, and they're the largest helium sellers in the world. It's basically an oligopoly of 4 or 5 companies, and I use oligopoly not in a negative sense. It's just that they dominate the sales side. And so the overwhelming majority of helium that's produced in North America is sold immediately to one of those companies. And then they will take it and they will upgrade it and process it and sell it to end user. So all the pricing built into the helium market is long-term contract pricing. So 3 to 5 year term contracts, obviously with price escalators in for inflation and whatnot. But modeling a helium project from an economic standpoint presents a very interesting challenge in that there's no visible market price. We were the first public helium company in North America, the first public company. So really, price transparency is going to begin with us. As we have to report financial results, it'll be easy to back into what the market rate for helium is according to our long-term. So that's going to be an interesting development for the industry, something that it's certainly not used to. There are other public companies who sell helium. Exxon, for example, has helium associated with its natural gas projects, but it's such a small component that it's not reported separately in their financial statements. So backing into it is virtually impossible. With us as a purpose-built helium company, it'll be clear as day.
So I guess my question then is, helium being produced, is it done more as an aside from other extraction processes, or?
That's exactly right, John. It's exactly right. So globally, it is produced exclusively as a byproduct of natural gas. That's it. Found traditionally, we'll back up a little bit. So helium is formed from the natural decay of uranium and thorium. That's how helium exists, the breakdown of uranium and thorium. And so when you look to places that have high uranium content in ground rocks, Saskatchewan comes to the top of the list. So places like Wyoming, Utah, Russia, these are the places that have helium fields, where it's produced with natural gas. And as a result, the production grade of helium is exceptionally low. Like from a gas stream in Qatar, for example, or Russia, the gas stream contains 0.04% helium, but it's harvested off at major gathering points and sold. And that's how it's done everywhere in the world except for Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan has a bit of a unique geological formation that traps helium below hydrocarbon zones down in the deadwood. That's how we end up producing it as a primary gas here with nitrogen as opposed to methane. Now, there is helium associated with natural gas production, but that's not what we're targeting. We don't own the oil and gas rights on our wells. We're helium exclusively, which is really, it's the first time it's been done in North America on a public company side. So sort of excited to pave that way. It's been an interesting challenge explaining the helium market to the investment community. There's a lot of questions, a lot of head scratching about what it's used for, why people should care about it. But I sort of explain it this way: everyone uses helium every day. You just don't know it. So if you have a mobile phone, an iPhone, the helium was used in the manufacturing of that device. Anyone who uses a computer, microchips, consume helium in the manufacturing process. The biggest single industry segment that uses helium is the healthcare industry, where it's used as a superconductor and industrial coolant in MRI machines. You cannot have an MRI without helium, and there's no replacement product for it in any of these uses. So it makes it so unique. It's a completely inert element in that it will not react and it will not bind with any other element on the periodic table. And it has the lowest boiling point of any element on Earth. It remains a liquid at absolute zero. This is why it's used as a supercoolant and a superconductor in MRI machines and elsewhere. The more interesting markets to me, and what really sort of piqued my interest when I looked into this back in 2016-17, was just that these industries like high-tech manufacturing that were growing at an immense rate and consuming helium at a growing rate. And the other one is rocketry. So the largest single customer in the U.S. for helium is NASA, which very few people know, and why would you, I guess, but every shuttle launch, every rocket launch, everything consumes helium in that process.
What kind of volumes are used there? Must be quite a bit.
You see the fuel tanks that are on these things. As fuel's expended, helium is injected as a counterbalance gas. Because it's inert, it's injected there, and there's no risk of reaction or combustion. And that's where the value really comes in on the rocketry side. So as you see, development in terms of increased launches from NASA and SpaceX and China, I mean, these things are going through helium at a rate faster than we've ever seen. It's really a phenomenally interesting industry in that it covers so many different areas, and we haven't talked about the ones that everyone knows about, like lifting, be it balloons or blimps or whatever, and then welding, deep sea diving, leak detection. It's used in every pipeline to check for leaks. It's phenomenally interesting in that it encompasses so many different segments of the economy that the risk on the demand side is exceptionally low. Demand is continuing to grow because there are more and more industries that use it, and there is no replacement product, nor is there a way to manufacture it in the lab in economic quantities. So it's a non-renewable resource that is growing in demand, and that's what's really led to the push into exploration for it here in the last 5 years or so. But from an economic or a supply standpoint, there was a major shock that hit the helium market in 2018. The largest supplier globally was the U.S. Strategic Helium Reserve, held by the Bureau of Land Management in Amarillo, Texas. Enormous underground storage cavern filled with helium, sold out of there, recharged with production.
And is that the federal government that's sort of commissioning that production, or is it the state, or?
Yeah, well, nobody now. I mean, they ceased that production entirely. So sales out of that cavern started to get phased out in 2013 and ended completely in 2018, which was, essentially a third of global supply yanked from the market. And it sent that shockwave through the price where it went from, 90 to 100 to 150 to 300 and grown since then. Because there has been no replacement field found. That gets back to the geological reasons that helium exists in the first place. It's found in natural gas wells, but only conventional natural gas wells. It's not found in shale gas. So as there's been a shift towards shale gas production and away from conventional, that's hurt the supply side even further. And that's how we end up in this unique situation where demand is rising, supply is falling, and price is spiking. Makes it a good time to own a decent helium land package.
And so you guys are in Saskatchewan. How does the rest of the country sort of stack up? Is Saskatchewan sort of the largest potential play for helium, or other areas?
Well, I mean, we certainly think it's the largest potential play for helium. It's where virtually all helium production in Canada comes from now. There's good helium fields in Alberta as well. Again, more associated with natural gas, but certainly present there.
And the uranium is one of the reasons?
Exactly. Well, uranium and thorium are the only reason it exists, period. So if that's not there, you do not have helium in your well. So that's why it's really certain segments of oil and gas producing regions of the world that have helium as a viable byproduct from the natural gas. So again, Wyoming, Utah, Alberta, Russia. These are places that have it in what would be deemed economic quantity anyway. So Saskatchewan is unique. It does not have the highest concentrations in the world, but it does have exceptionally high flow rates and an exceptional amount of gas. It has been written that Saskatchewan has the 5th largest helium reserves in the world. I'm not sure that's been proven in any way, shape, or form. I suppose we'll have a part of proving that. But, it's a great industry to be involved with, and especially times like this when, we've seen the pain that the oil and gas sector has been going through for no good reason over the last number of years. This provides an outlet because all the services, all the drilling and completions are exactly the same as you would use in a oil and gas well. And to the extent that we can offer a new line of business, a new line of drilling that uses that skill set, it's a phenomenal opportunity for industry. And,
yeah. One
of the reasons that the government of Saskatchewan has been so heavily behind this industry developing is it's such an important addition or bolt on to our existing oil and gas space. Something that is more, or sorry, I should say less subject to global geopolitical risk in terms of pricing. It's not subject to any environmental uproar because there's nothing negative to the environment in the gas stream that we produce. Nitrogen and helium, neither of which have a negative impact on anything. If green projects matter to you, this would qualify as well. Yeah. So it was great to see that we could, help industry here. There was certainly a lot of services available when we went to quote our drill program, and had the ability to partner with some of the best in the industry, like Savannah.
Yeah, well, our members are, really extremely happy that there are other opportunities for drilling wells. So what's next for you guys? What have you got a program in place, or kind of what are the next steps for Royal?
Yeah, well, we're just winding up this drill program we started back in January. We're doing 3 wells. We've got about 500 meters to go on our last one. This is when the interesting drilling comes, so it'll be another week or so before we get down there. From there, we have to go through our completions program, test all these wells, and test the helium concentrations to ensure that we have an economic quantity there. And then we'll be looking to put those 3 on production as soon as we can. And from there, we intend to drill out both infill drilling within our Climax land package we're drilling now, and other parts of the province. And we we control about 1 million acres of helium rights in Saskatchewan, split evenly between the southwest and the southeast. So we're going to be quite active on the drilling side, but approving up reserves over the next 12, 18, 24 months. If we're doing our job right, I really don't see slowing down anytime soon. I mean, we have to get over this initial hurdle of proving that helium is in fact here in economic quantity from these 3 wells. Once it is, the risk is pulled off and it's now into development time. There's a lot of wells can be drilled into 1 million acres.
Yeah, and so from a completion standpoint, what's a service rig doing on a helium well?
Same thing it'd be doing on a natural gas well. So, we've identified potential productive zones at varying depths off of wireline logs through the drilling process. And we'll go back in and we'll start testing them from the bottom up, and that's basically it. You run in, you shoot your perfs through casing, and then run gas tests on fluctuating intervals, and then gas collection obviously at the top, the major part of it. Put the gas stream into a contained cylinder and send it off for analysis on what the constituents of that gas are, and from there you shift over to production. It's really the same process. You check flow rates, you check porosity, permeability, recharge rates, all of these things. And we've partnered with Sproul to design that testing protocol. So they're involved with us actively now. We announced that this morning. So great partners to have. Certainly there's not many better than that in the oil and gas industry to help you design a testing program and come up with a 51-101 report on reserves. That's where we go over the next couple of months anyway.
Well, that's great. Exciting times for sure. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. Where can people find out more information about Royal?
Absolutely. So our website is www.royalheliumltd.com. Everything's on there, including my contact information. Anyone who has any questions or any services they could offer or anything along those lines can reach out to me at any time. My email's on there. The phone number that's on there is my cell phone number. Always available. Love talking about helium. Just enjoy spreading the word about this industry, which could be a great boon to Canada and to Western Canada specifically, as we're inventing something new. The industry's been around for a while, but not on a grand scale. It's going to be an interesting couple of years in the future here for helium in general and Royal Helium specifically.
All right. Well, that's Andrew Davidson, President, CEO, and Chairman of the Board at Royal Helium Ltd. Thanks again.